I'm going to show you two of the brushes I've created in Procreate that I use for most of my designing to get started. They're fairly simple brushes to create. So this plain tech pen, this is the first one. I use it for most of my drawing to get started. It's just a hard-edged pen. Procreate comes with a lot of brushes. This technical pen was one that came with Procreate. Now see, it tells you here that I modified it. I probably modified them all at this point. You can reset them if you want to by sliding that over and these come. I'm going to duplicate this brush because I'm going to show you how to pop it into another folder. This little symbol here on the left says that you either created the brush or you've duplicated it. So we're going to go and look at the folders here, slide right to the end and hit this plus sign, and we're going to create a new folder for our brushes, and I'm going to call it experiments, and that's where I'm going to put all the brushes. When you're experimenting with brushes, it's good to keep them separate so that you can find them, and then you can place them back in other folders. So we're going to open the folder with that one I duplicated from the original. I'm going to go slide back to the experiments folder, and I'm just going to drag that brush into the folder. There you go, and it's sitting in that folder. Now I can play with it all I want and it doesn't affect the rest of my brushes right now. So we're going to go back to my plain tech pen and I'm going to show you how I created this. So we're going to go into source to start with, and this shape source and grain source you bring in on your own. I'm just going to show you here that my interface, I use the light interface. If you want, you can switch back to the dark interface, and there, see, they have a white on black. But if I go back to my light interface, which is where I like to operate, I have black on light. And I prefer this. So it's really just personal preference, but I'll show you, I just wanted to show you the difference. So under our sources, the shape source, I'm going to go in and show you, I just get it out of their Pro library. They have a nice selection here. You can bring in your own, but that's something for another tutorial or another video. So here they have different softness. I want the hard one. I just want a hard edged brush. And then the grain source, I go back into the Pro library and there's lots of grain sources you could use and experiment with. I just want, again, just a plain hard brush, so I go for the perfectly filled in square. And these two are going to give me the pen that I'm looking for. So let's go to this stroke. I'll start by playing around with the spacing to show you. If you create more space, then you're going to get what the shape actually is. So because the shape is a circle, I get dots. But I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a solid line. So I keep spacing at 0 and I get my solid line. So spacing stays at none. I like my streamline at the top for this one because it smooths out any jagged little parts of my line. So if I turn the streamline off, your line gets a very hand-drawn look. But if I put the streamline to the max, it really smooths out my line. So I kind of play with that depending on what I need when I'm drawing. But I do like to keep it up high. Next, we're going to look at the jitter. If I move the jitter up to the top or anywhere in between, my shape just kind of scatters around. If I play with the spacing on this, I can actually get like a stippling look, which is useful, but not for this pen. So I keep my spacing at 0 and I keep my jitter at 0. So I'm just kind of showing you how changing these affects your pen. So the next one would be the stroke tapers. I keep them all off for this pen, but if I were to turn these on, I have opacity and size. If I put opacity up, then the beginning and end of my stroke becomes a little less opaque. So I get a softness to the end, beginning and end of my stroke. I don't want that for my hard pen. I just want a nice hard edge. Again, if I do the size to the max with the tapers on, it tapers the beginning and the end. You get a lot of size variance at the beginning and end of your stroke. Don't want that, so I'm going to turn that off and my stroke tapers off. So that just shows you what they do, but from my tech pen, I keep everything off there. So the only thing up is the streamline. So then we go into shape. Shape doesn't really affect because it's a perfect circle, so scatter rotation doesn't affect it's a perfectly symmetrical shape. And grain the same, it's a perfectly filled in square, so there's no texture to deal with. So those I don't deal with. In this area dynamics, the fall off does affect. So I keep it at 0 because if you have it on, your stroke just falls off. This area, the dynamics, is really good if you're working on painting brushes because it deals with the amount, like the fall off, the accumulation, the flow. So I keep everything at pretty much 0 for this, and I don't do the glazing or the accumulation because again, it's just a perfect straight pen. Under pencil pressure, again, I want to keep the settings at 0. If I put the opacity up either way, it affects either end of the stroke, and it works with the pressure of my pencil. Again, also with the size, it tapers either end of the stroke. And again, it's based on the amount of pressure that I would use. And I'm not interested in any pressure. I don't want any pressure sensitivities. And the tilt works with the Apple Pencil. So if I were to tilt my pencil a certain way, I get different looks, and I don't want that either. So pretty simple, keeping all those at 0. This orient to iPad screen I don't need to worry about because again, it's a perfect circle. This size limits I do play with. So here, this is the maximum size limit. So when I'm drawing with my pencil, if I moved it right to the top, this is as large as the pencil will get, and this is as small as it will get. So that's what these settings work with. So this is where I keep it. If I move it to the absolute max, and I keep it, see the minimum is still good, still the same, but I take it to the top and I get a wickedly thick line. So that's what the size limits work with. And then your minimum I keep at 0 because I want it to be able to go as thin as possible. If I moved it up a little, then my minimum line, if I pull this all the way down to the bottom, is now thicker because I've set my minimum at a higher thickness. So I don't want that. I want that as low as possible, and the max, I kind of, like I said, around 20% is what I work with just for a basic pen. My opacity limits I need to keep up as well because if I don't, then I'm just going to get a partially opaque line, and that's not the nice thick black line I want. So the opacity limits I would keep up to the top, and I'll get rid of the rest of those. So see, I have a plain tech pen that's thick and I have one that's thin, and that's with the max limits, that last setting I showed you, because sometimes I want a really thick line, so I want more variety, and sometimes I don't. So it's just faster for me to have two different pens. Now we're going to work with the eraser because this is the second brush I'm going to show you. So in Procreate, you can use any of the brushes in the eraser section, which is great if you're painting in watercolor. You can erase with a watercolor brush. Now I'm just going to show you, I could use my plain tech pen with my eraser, but there's a few settings that are a little different, so I've created a separate brush. So this one is my eraser brush, and I'm just going to show you the settings. So the source is the same, but my stroke, when I did the plain tech pen, I have the streamline to the max. In my eraser, I want the streamline at 0. Now the point of this is that I'm just going to fill this section with black and show you that if I have the eraser with the streamline maxed out, it kind of drags the line. It drags where I want to erase, and I can't get a very accurate erase. So if I take the streamline back down to 0 and I try to erase, it erases everything I touch. And that's just because the streamline is trying to smooth out whatever I'm doing, and I don't need it to when, in fact, it works against you when you're using an eraser. So the only difference there is the streamline is going to be to the bottom. And then in the general section, this size limits, I play around with that because I want an eraser for small and an eraser for big that I've set up. The big eraser has it maxed out. This is handy because then I can decide if I'm doing a large section, I go for the big eraser and I have more flexibility there. If I just want fine work, then it's easier to use the small eraser settings. And that's how I created 2 of my go-to brushes for my designing process. So make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and catch all my videos on my creative process. See you soon.